Hi everyone, my name is Shervin Jane Palamos, a BSED English 2 student. And this video is the continuation of Raylan T. Fernandez report in Facilitating Learner-Centered Teaching, Module 11, Information Processing Theory. So, information processing theory. Since Raylan's report is the introduction up to the three primary stages of information processing, we will start at the three main stages in the memory process. So, before we start, let's see the objectives of my report. Objectives. Know the three main stages in the memory process, describe and explain the executive control process, reasons why we forget, and methods to retrieve information, implication and application of information processing in learning. So first, we have the three main stages in the memory process, and these are the sensory register, short-term memory or working memory, and long-term memory. So, sensory register. So, before we start, let's recall the five senses, which are touch, smell, hearing, taste, and sight. So, let's go back to the sensory register. Its main purpose is to screen incoming stimuli and process those that are relevant at the present time. For example, seeing a dog, or feeling a soft blanket, hearing a train, inhaling scent of a perfume, and tasting the creamy mango float. So these are the things that we acquire through senses. Its capacity is unlimited, so there is no limitations on those stimuli that keeps on coming. While its capacity is unlimited, but it has only a duration of 1 to 3 seconds if not fully attended to. But there is a difference duration based on modality, like auditory memory is more persistent than visual. Example, we tend to memorize songs quickly rather than phrases that we see and read. Another is we sometimes remember the tone and lyrics but we don't remember the title, which is the one we see. Second is short-term memory, also called working memory, because it is where new information is temporarily placed while it is mentally processed. So STM or short-term memory maintain information for a limited time until the learner has the adequate resources to process the information or until the information is forgotten. So example, where you park your car this morning, or what your mom said before she left, and what did you eat in lunch. It can hold up to 5 to 9 chunks of information and have a duration around 18 seconds. So to lessen the loss of information, you need to do maintenance rehearsal. Example, repeating a cell phone number again and again. Just like when we were kids, where our mother will tell us to buy something in the store and we will repeat it over and over again so we don't forget it. So short-term memory have three components. The first one is the executive control system, where humans make conscious meaning of the information they process. For example, when a person saw a penny while walking, its automatic response is to pick it up. People have this automatic response to something they are conscious of. So the second is the articulatory loop, maintains and further processes verbal information. So, example, your mom told you to buy salt and many more, but you are rehearsing it in your mind so you don't forget it. It is more like maintenance rehearsing but need deeper process and is internal. So, the third and last is Visual Spatial Sketchpad. Responsible of handling visual and spatial information, is either forwarded to a long-term memory or deleted from the system. Example, when you are sketching a flower, it's either you keep looking at the actual flower or retrieving the image of the flower in your mind. In short, these are the images in our mind, whether we saw the actual or we imagine it. Back again to the last stage of memory process is long-term memory or LTM. Final or permanent storing house for memory information until needed again. Example, birth date, wedding anniversary, and even direction to your home. These are the information that has been pinned in our minds. Sometimes there are information that we thought we forgot but is still stored in LTM. Its capacity is unlimited and duration is indefinite or unknown. So we will move forward to executive control process. Involve the executive processor, or what refers to as metacognitive skills. These processes guide the flow of information through the system, help the learner inform decision about how to categorize, organize, or interpret information. It helps the learner what to do to a specific information. So, information processing model. In this figure, we see that information is received through the senses and goes to the sensory memory for a very brief amount of time. If not found relevant, information may decay. It goes to the STM, and if given attention and is perceived and found to be relevant, it is sent to the LTM, or long-term memory. If not properly encoded, forgetting occurs. Different cognitive processes applied to the information will then determine if information can be retrieved when needed later. I have here a video that will greatly help in understanding the model.
So the information processing model kind of sees the mind as a computer, but an imperfect computer. And so there's kind of three stages to memory. The very first part is the sensory memory. And the sensory memory is just everything that you're observing with all of your senses. And so all of that is input. And really, your sensory memory is unlimited, and you retain everything for about 2 to 3 seconds. After that, it's either gone or you pay attention to it. And so there's kind of 4 reasons why you might pay attention to something. One is kind of the size, intensity, novelty of something, or incongruity. So for instance, like if you see a palm tree in Alaska, that might seem strange, so you're going to pay attention to that, right? And then once you kind of pay attention to something, then it goes into your working memory. Your working memory can hold about 5 to 9 items for 5 to 20 seconds. Now there's different ways to kind of trick yourself into remembering more items, like you can chunk things together, and it only holds it for about 5 to 20 seconds. And so that's what this loop right here is for. So there's different things that you can do to kind of keep it in your working memory. You can rehearse it and you can go over it. You can try to, like I said, chunk it with other information. So basically what you're doing is you just keep looping it back and forth and back and forth. Eventually, that will be encoded into your long-term memory. So there's different ways to encode information. Like you can use, let's say, mnemonic devices to kind of help you remember things or encode it into your long-term memory. So you can use acrostics to kind of remember things, or acronyms such as ROY GBIT for the colors of the rainbow, things like that. You can use chain mnemonics, kind of rhymes or things like that, jingles that will help you remember things. You can use visualizations to try to remember that as well. And so then once it's been coded into long-term memory, this holds huge amounts of information, perhaps unlimited amounts of information, from anywhere from a day to a lifetime, depending on how important it is to you or how well you've encoded that into your memory. For instance, some of you may still remember the phone number that you used when you were a child, right? Because you just rehearsed that over and over and over until it became ingrained or encoded into your memory, and then that can be retrieved. Now, all of the information in a long-term memory can be always retrieved easily. Sometimes it takes a triggering event to retrieve certain types of information. Some other types of information can be easily retrieved, depending on how frequently you use it. But that's basically it. But essentially, if you're a teacher and you're following the information processing model, you need your students to pay attention to something. You need to help them to use it in their working memory. So you can use mnemonics, acrostics, all these different mind tools to try to help them understand, to try to help them encode that information in their long-term memory. And then as a teacher, you ask them to retrieve that information every so often. So you can do that informally or on exams or things like that.
Why do we forget? Did you ask that before to yourself? Then what is forgetting? So, forgetting is the inability to retrieve or access information when needed. So, why do we forget? There are two answers for that. First, the memory has disappeared, it is no longer available. Second, the memory is still stored in the memory system, but for some reason, it cannot be retrieved. And there are two main ways in which forgetting likely occurs. First is decay. It occurs when information is not attended to and eventually fades away, very prevalent in working memory. Example, you ate dinner and after few days you will eventually forget what you ate in that dinner because our mind doesn't find that information relevant. The second one is interference. New or old information blocks the access to the information in question. Example, you are having a class and cannot acquire the information due to the loud noises of the construction sites. Another is you can't remember the lesson last week because you have acquired so much information this week. So there are two types of interference. So the first one is proactive or pro-forward. Occurs when you cannot learn new tasks because of an old task that had been learned. And the second one is retroactive or retro-backward. Occurs when you forget previously learned tasks due a learning of new tasks. So we will move forward to methods for increasing retrieval of information. So this includes the methods the learners can use to remember and retrieve information. So let's start with rehearsal. This repeating information verbatim either mentally or aloud. Example, you are going to memorize a poem and you are reading it aloud again and again. This is the common and effective method of retrieving information. Next, organization. It is making connection among various pieces of information. Example, you are organizing your books based on their genre. When you organize things, it will have its key points and make it easier to remember. Meaningful learning. This is making connections between new information and prior knowledge. Example, you encountered an injured man and help him because you have knowledge about first aid. Learners will all actually remember things when it is needed and significant to present time. So the next, elaboration. This is adding additional ideas to new information based on what one already knows. So example, you knew about cancer, but you just recently know about its causes. When you add some ideas, it will serve as its key point. And when you encounter those, it is easier for you to remember. And then, visual imagery. This means forming a picture of the information. Example, your younger brother asks you what an apple looks like, and you describe it to him. So our minds are having the image of an apple. Next is context. Remembering the situation helps recover information. Example, you lost your phone, and you are remembering where did you came from before you lost it. Then the next, generation. Things we produce are easier to remember than things we hear. Example, writing our own notes is an effective technique when we are reviewing because when we are just listening, we can't really acquire the information and we can't remember it. So next, personalization. It is making the information relevant to the individual. Example, you are learning how to inject insulin because you have diabetes. So there are other memory methods. First, serial position effect, recency and primacy. You will remember the beginning and the end of list most readily. So example, when you read a novel 2 months ago, you will just remember the beginning of the story and the ending of the story. So the second, distributed practice. or break up learning sessions rather than cramming all the time info at once, or massed practice. Example, you have 4 modules and you decide that you will work on it 1 week per module. Third is part learning, or break up the list or chunk information to increase memorization. Example, memorizing poem 1 stanza at a time. So you are breaking up the poem into chunks. So mnemonic aids. These are memory techniques that learner may employ to help them retrain and retrieve information more effectively. Example, Roy G. Biv. It recalls the color of the rainbow. So let's continue on implications of information processing theory for teaching. So first, memory stores are extremely limited for both sensory and working memory, aside from long-term memory where the storage is indefinite. Next, teachers should make sure students selectively focus their attention on important information and engage in as much as automated processing as possible. So as much as possible, teachers should not include in the discussion insignificant information to focus on important information. So, relevant prior knowledge facilitates encoding and retrieval. So, information that are relevant have the high chance of retrieval. So, and then helping students use their prior knowledge when learning a new information promotes learning. And then, applications of information processing in learning. From an instructor's standpoint, information processing is used to help learners to further enhance their respective skills and understand the curriculum being presented. So these are the skills that can be acquired of the learners. So focusing skills involve the determination of a situation and establishment of the appropriate ways to address it. And then, information gathering skills involve the collection of information around the situation and formulation of questions that will clarify it. Next, remembering skills involve encoding and recalling, which are both directly linked to mnemonics. So we all know what mnemonics mean. And then lastly, organizing skills include comparison, categorization, sequencing, visual, verbal, or symbolic representations. That's all for my report. Thank you for watching and hope you learned something. God bless you all.